few podcasts that I listened to. I mean, obviously, I saw that you guys started the is it Scale and Bale? Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. And so I was listening to a little bit of that, but that was more like question and answer. So I was like, okay, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll get some info, but I was like, I want to know about like his life. I want to know the juicy, creepy middle school stories.
Oh yeah, plenty of those.
And so, anyway, so when I there was one. Hold on, and I want to give the guys credit. Modern Happiness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got into the woods, man.
Yeah, and anyways, you hooked me with selling rocks. So
moving weight, literally.
So if it's okay with you, we don't have to rehash the whole story, but maybe we can just start there because I think it paints a picture for people listening, like just how much of like an entrepreneurial mind that you have, and then that'll kind of set up where you are and maybe why you've had so much success. So I'll let you I'll let you take it.
Yeah, man, of course. That's perfect.
So, okay, as you were growing up, what led you because here's the $1 million question. What led you to start selling rocks? That's let's just start with that question. Go ahead.
All right. As I was growing up, what led me to start selling rocks? I wonder what I was trying to buy. It's so interesting because it's not like I can remember specifically what I was trying to buy. I had a lot of different phases when I was growing up. One phase was I was going to be the world's best mini motorcycle racer. Pocket bikes, remember those things?
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to be the world's best at that. But that wasn't until like my freshman year of high school. But in middle school, when I was selling rock, it had to have been to buy basketball cards. I think the whole game plan was I'll sell anything I can to make a few bucks, take that cash, invest it into basketball cards, because obviously that was the best investment of the money. Get some amazing packs of cards, open them up, and then, wheel and deal those individual cards and just level up. That was it. I was just going to keep leveling up. I didn't necessarily know the long-term plan. I just knew that I think in middle school is when I had the brilliant idea to start not buying lunch at lunch because everyone would have leftovers. So I would take the $1.75 that my parents gave me and I would pocket it, and I would, because they gave it to me, they didn't specify that it had to be used for lunch, or I just didn't ask any questions.
They were assuming it was going to be used for lunch, but they
certainly assumed, they assumed it was going to be used for lunch, but rather than force my hand, I was like, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if I could hold on to this $1.75 and see if I can't, drum up a nice meal for my friends. And that's exactly what I did too, because like all of my friends would have like crazy amounts of, food and stuff like that, and they just wouldn't eat it all.
Yeah.
And I just was like, hey, you gonna eat that? And then I would like actually end up with quite the feast. So yeah, I had multiple streams of income when I was in middle school, but it was definitely selling rocks in the backyard to my friends, and then also pocketing $1.75 5 times a week. I mean, you do the math, man. You're
rich.
I was rolling it. I didn't understand compound interest yet, though. I wish I did, because if I had invested that money into something that had more compound returns, I wouldn't have to work, right?
Self-made millionaire at 16.
I mean, think about it. If I was buying Bitcoin back then, I mean, right?
Yeah, and Bitcoin is such an interesting thing now. Not to get on a tangent about Bitcoin, but I parked some money in Bitcoin. I parked some money in Ethereum and Doge back when it was going to the moon. But look, here's my thought process. It's like, first of all, if if you don't have the money to be investing, like, then you shouldn't be investing in dumb shit. So that's investing 101.
Correct.
So let's just disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. But my thought is like, well, hell, I might as well do it. And it's like, it's like I don't need the money anyways, so I might as well put it in something that, hey, if this blows up, man, I'm going to be the smartest guy on the block. But if it doesn't, it's like, well, I didn't really lose anything either.
Yeah.
But
it's like gambling. Gambling should be discretionary income only.
100%.
Investing in maybe smarter investments, or let's say more conservative investments, should probably be a good use of your money rather than, going out to eat 6 times a week. But yeah, then when you get into the crypto side of things, that's a whole can of worms. But yeah,
it is.
Investing is not neither of our expertises, but it's certainly something that everyone should read up on.
Yeah,
it's a good,
100%.
good thing to know about.
Yeah, it's don't be a complete idiot. Don't be completely naive. But anyways, okay, so you're selling rocks, which is interesting to your friends, and just so we're clear, like, you didn't draw like a smiley face on them, because, by the way, this is what blew my mind. They actually, and maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. They sell rocks, and I don't know the name of the company. I think it's maybe called Happy Rocks. I'm not kidding you. They're like. I think they call them river rocks. They're like flat rocks,
Yeah, like all polished.
Yeah, and they draw faces on them. And they sell these suckers for, depending on the design, $16 to $25 a rock.
See,
with a Sharpied design on them.
Back in the late 90s, I was selling rocks for more than that. So I'm not that impressed with that company.
You heard it here.
Yeah, so in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was selling rocks for anywhere between $30 and $40. What? Yeah.
In the 90s. Inflation hadn't even happened yet.
No, it had not. The key, was, so when you're just selling rocks with smiley faces on them, there's no hope that there might be gold on the inside of that rock, right? There's no hope in it. It's just, you're buying a rock with a smiley face on it, right?
Yeah,
the rocks that I was selling were just, your standard issue construction drainage site rocks.
Yeah.
Just like the white, they're just rocks, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
I get it.
But some of them would have these little gold like nuggets in them. I never had it tested, so I didn't know if it was real gold. It could have been. And I was selling these rocks, and they had all these gold nuggets in them. And I demonstrated that if you smash the rocks against the ground, you can break them up and then pull out the little gold nuggets, which I did. And I also have a scar on my left pinky from when I had an accident trying to break up some rocks. 3 stitches. Well, I think that was the key for selling the rocks at a high markup, which is like, hey, listen, like, this one's super shiny. Like, I had some that were like naturally just the shiniest rocks you've ever seen. And then I had some that, had gold nuggets in them. Turns out it might not have been actual gold, but they were gold looking, right?
So it made sense.
Exactly. People buy gold looking jewelry all the time. So yeah, that was it. And I remember, it's so funny though, because it like started really early. Like, I was selling rocks in middle school, and literally it was like, we're talking rocks. They were construction site rocks.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't code for anything. I was selling those, and then I remember like when I eventually got to like high school and college, like my dad was always just like, Ben, you need a job, like Ben, you should probably like come work for me during the summers. And I've always told everyone I'm unemployable. Okay. And I remember just telling my dad that, like, Dad, I'm good. I've got liquid assets. Like that, I came up with this like term, like all the stuff that I could sell to other people was called liquid assets, which is like totally not what a liquid asset is.
Definitely
liquid
not,
asset is cash, but whatever. For me, all of my fishing equipment was a liquid asset. All of my basketball cards were liquid assets. All of my, like, all these like random things that I've collected over the years that I could technically sell to other people, I would just call them liquid assets.
Because you could potentially turn it to cash. So it's liquid.
Yeah, it's liquid. Everyone wants fishing gear. And sure enough, that's what I did. At some point in college, I, like, rather than working, one, I won a bunch of money fishing in tournaments. And then two, like, every once in a while, like, I would sell like a couple fishing rods that my sponsors had given me, probably completely against the terms and conditions I may or may not have signed for these like sponsorship deals. Like, hey, these are for your use only. I didn't read the fine print. I just got the gear and I negotiated sponsorships, and then like every once in a while I'd sell a batch of lures to people on the fishing team I was on, and yeah, kept my pockets lined with enough money to, fish. It was great.
Were your parents entrepreneurs, or like, I mean,
no,
because okay, so I kind of come from this idea of like, at some point, yes, I think some things are innate and some things are genetic for people, but where was this like, or was it? Was this behavior modeled for you in any way that you would be able to go, I need to go do this, or, oh, this makes sense, and then you put your own spin on it?
It's so funny you say modeled. Yeah. So I'm currently reading Wanting, which is a book that's all about mimetic desire and like what models and like basically like why do you want the things that you want? And the argument is that a lot of times it's just like someone in our lives or someone that's a rival at work that we model their desire. So like, it's almost like Borat, you'll get the window from a glass, I get the window from a glass. So like he get the step, I get the step. I get the clock radio, he cannot afford great success. Like
that was fantastic.
Thank you. I didn't even go full Borat, but I it's a little early for me, but I can go full Borat.
Very nice.
Very nice. God. So anyway, it's interesting though, because when I was in middle school, there was no one that I was modeling this like entrepreneurial spirit off of. Like there was no one that's like, oh, he's selling stuff, I'm going to sell stuff to make money. I think the only like quote unquote, like models or mimetic desire, the only thing I was like wanting was to have a better basketball card collection. Like I just wanted jersey cards. I wanted to be able to buy more packs so that I could have Michael Jordan. All I wanted was like the Kobe Bryant cards and Michael Jordan cards. Like I wanted these top level cards. And the only way to do that was to buy more packs because I wasn't rolling in enough to buy individual cards, and that's not fun. It's way more fun to gamble on a pack and may or may not get a good card or not. I have like PTSD, and this isn't a knock on people with real PTSD, but the figurative version of it, of a couple times when I pulled really great cards, and then like I was so excited about having a really good card that I would like carry it around with me or like keep it by my nightstand. And like one time I spilled water on a Tracy McGrady jersey card. One time I like creased a card because I put it in my pocket like an idiot. Oh, I was such a stupid child. But no, my parents were not entrepreneurs in any way, shape, or form. The only time that I finally had like a model of an entrepreneur was in high school. I was in a lot of like various like gifted and talented classes, right? GT classes, what we call them. So not quite AP classes, but GT classes. And I hated them because you had to do homework, and oftentimes all the other kids really cared about getting good grades. I cared about getting good grades simply because I didn't want my parents to get mad at me, but I hated doing homework. So I would, let's just say my high school, I did a lot of things that an entrepreneur would be proud of, but my teachers wouldn't have been. Like, how can I negotiate with some nice lady to like have her give me most of the essay? And then I'll just like rewrite parts of it and still get an A, which like, and it's so funny because like when you're like an entrepreneur, like that's the name of the game. Is like, don't steal from anyone else. Like
outsource.
pay someone, outsource, and get the work done at, at a quality level that the person grading the assignment is acceptable with. High school, not supposed to do that. College, not supposed to do that. But I did and survived nonetheless. But in high school, I took one class that was it was called Intern/Mentorship GT. So basically, It was like this class where you had to submit a few you had to submit an application to join this class, and then basically the teacher was like, all right, you need to go find a mentor, and you're gonna leave during school hours to go work with this mentor, and the mentor will show you the the specifics of their trade, yada yada yada. So in this class, I had the audacity to just be like, I want to be a professional fisherman when I grow up, and the teacher was like, so how is that going to work? And I explained, it's like, hey,
I'm going to go fishing every day.
Yeah. But I explained to him that professional fishing, if you want to make it in the professional bass fishing industry, it's not about catching fish. It's about negotiating sponsorship deals. It's about working with companies who are willing to pay you. It's about marketing yourself and the brands that you represent. So I made that argument, and he was like, oh, okay. And funny enough, this teacher, Mr. Ashcraft, you're the man, and I love you. This teacher has such good memory recognition and name recall. He was like, yeah, I fished in a tournament on Lake Gaston back in 1984. And this is I don't know, what is it? It's probably 2006.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I guess it was back in the early 90s, I fished in this one tournament on Lake Gaston, because that's where he had a little house, a trailer on the water. And he was like, I fished with this guy called Frank Ippoliti. Somehow remembers this guy's name. I look up this guy, because he's like, you should probably reach out to him, because he's kind of in the Maryland, area, if I remember correctly. Maybe he'll sponsor you, or maybe he'll be your mentor.
Yeah.
So I literally go to the yellow pages, look up this guy's name. Luckily, there's only one Ippoliti. Frank Ippoliti is, in Mercersburg, Pennsylvania, or I think it might have been Hagerstown, Maryland. I use the yellow pages, look up this guy's phone number, and call him and leave him a message. Frank is my second dad now.
Holy shit.
Just insane that my teacher at school somehow let me say, he somehow said yes to okay, yeah, I guess you could have a mentor who's a professional fisherman. I fished it, luckily this teacher had fished a couple tournaments and had kind of been exposed to professional fishing. And he remembers this guy's name from some random tournament in the early 90s. Wow. I look up, he remembers the spelling of the guy's name. I look it up in the yellow pages, send one person one message. Hi, my name's Ben. I have a project for school and need someone to teach me how to be a professional fisherman. Please call me back. And then we wind up, this is my junior and senior year, my junior year of high school. And then I also carried it into senior year because it was such a cush deal. But junior year, I ended up being able to take multiple days off of school to go travel with this guy Frank as he fished these tournaments, and we were tournament partners. I signed up, I got a sponsor to pay for my entry fees to sign up, and I got to drive around the country. It was really only the mid-Atlantic region, but for me that was a lot of travel back in that day.
100%. And
I was taking off, I would go into school and be like, hey, yeah, I got to go on tour with my mentor. and I would miss Thursday and Friday of school, and it was all signed off on because of this mentorship thing. And my other teachers were just whatever, Ben, you do you. And they just kind of rolling their eyes. And I would still I would get good grades in the classes. Some of my classes, I would just show up kind of sort of naturally, physics class. I didn't read I'd never bought the physics books we were supposed to get or whatever, and still got an A in the class because I just understood it. And similar to entrepreneurship, it's one of those things where if you just have an innate ability, some people have it, some people don't. And I think I just had this innate ability to just because it's done this way doesn't mean I can't try to do it my way. And that's kind of what turned into this class. So I got this fishing mentor. Turns out that Frank owned a car dealership in like Northern Maryland. So he was an entrepreneur. Like he was an entrepreneur through and through. Complained about taxes all the time. He complained about his employees all the time. But he was always just teaching me these like, I like had no idea until like reflecting on it semi recently how many lessons he taught me in terms of like, hey Ben, like I know you say you want to be a professional fisherman. It's really tough. I've been there and done that. I've had a 6-figure paycheck from sponsors, and then it's all been, taken away once one sponsor decides they don't want to sponsor people anymore. He's like, I would recommend start a business and then use that business to fund your fishing so that you're not fishing for paychecks. You're fishing to have fun on the pro tour. That's fine. But you have some sort of other income that provides you the freedom and flexibility to do what you want. And for me, that's fishing. And I have this used car dealership. So I have a used car dealership. We do a really good job. It's profitable. And then I take that profit and I am able to actually sponsor myself on these bass fishing tours. I'm able to use a lot of my dealership trucks for my vehicles. Like I use it all to help, me do these fishing tournaments. And like, I had no idea how much of an impact that was on me, but it just like, it showed me one that like, you can be an entrepreneur. You can start your own thing. Because my mom and dad, especially my dad, my mom mainly took care of 3 crazy children growing up. So she had the hardest job out of everyone. But my dad was always like, I remember when I like mentioned to him that I was like thinking about, basically being an entrepreneur. He's like, yeah, but what about like a safe income and healthcare and retirement? And I was like, are you kidding me, Dad? Like, I don't need any of those things. I remember when he like asked me that, I got like angry. I was like, Dad, no. Like, that is ridiculous. That sounds terrible. Luckily, I was able to use Frank probably as that model of success for like, he's doing it. Like, he's able to have flexibility in his schedule to like go and fish these tournaments. He's able to use, like, he has the finances to where like, even if he like, and for his term was like, even if I shit the bed in my tournament, like even if he sucks in the tournament, he's not like, oh no, now I can't buy groceries this week, which unfortunately it's similar to like the starving artist in LA or, like the starving musician in Nashville, where it's like, if something doesn't work out, you're like, you don't have anything. And that's kind of how it is for a lot of pro fishermen, where it's like, if you blow it on one tournament and don't cash a check, you're like, oh man, I don't have any money. So he's like, don't play that game. Instead, start your own business and then use that business to fuel your passions. And that's sort of how I wound up without even recognizing it until recently.
So man, there's so much to unpack here. When this was, just so I can get the timeline right, this was high school. So you said you're a sophomore, junior, senior? Where are you in the grand scheme of high school here? This
was when I started the mentorship thing. It was junior year, and then I was able to carry it over, and I did it the next year, obviously. And then senior year, I was even more hardcore with it. It was like I remember we had one tournament in, I think it was like some big regional that I had made because like I actually did well. I think the second tournament I fished with him, he was a boater. I was a co-angler, so I was like on the back of the boat. I got second place out of like 500 people, and Frank was like, "Oh man, you can fish, can't you?" Like, huh? And then he was just like, I got a fisherman on my hands. So we did a lot of stuff together, and I took off an entire week one of my senior years. It was fantastic. Anyway, junior and senior year.
No,
all these memories are just flooding back.
This is
right now.
Great. So, how long did this venture last? I mean, because clearly you were very into it, and sounds like you're pretty good at it. So, how long did this last with him, or did you go off on your own? Kind of what happened from there? Yeah.
So junior year, we started fishing some tournaments together, and it was like the most incredible. Like, I learned so much about life, about professional fishing, like more of like the good, bad, and ugly of it. I learned a lot about fishing techniques because he was a machine, and I was picking up all this stuff. So I learned more that junior and senior year than I have in, I don't know, ever probably. Like, I was a sponge soaking up so much from Frank. So senior year comes around, and I was also like fishing some of my own stuff to try to qualify for various like junior championships. And my senior year of high school, I was fishing like a junior Bassmaster tournament trail. This had nothing to do with Frank, because we were fishing like pro/amateur stuff, where I was the amateur, he was the pro. And it was like all ages, but I was also fishing these like junior tournament trails. Well, my senior year, I like barely, by some like little thing in the rules, like basically I qualified for the world championship. I was like the Maryland state champion, and really what happened was like I like won this tournament because like I got second place, but the guy who won, his boat broke down and he came in late, and that's a disqualification, even though it didn't have anything to do with him, because we were using volunteers boats. But long story short, they're like, hey, this is life. Like, no, unfortunately, like you're DQ'd, you were late, so second place is first place. So like I won this tournament kind of by like, I was on pins and needles for like 2 weeks as the board of directors decided who's going to go to the national championship. So I ended up qualifying for the national championship. And I remember like I lived in a freaking my senior year of high school, don't have like 2 pennies to rub together. You know, I'd been selling some rocks and basketball cards and other liquid assets, and ended up like living in this like, in what it was coined the term party house of this random guy I found on the internet that would let me crash at his party house down.
This was before Airbnb, and there's
down at Lake Monticello. Yeah, it was like I was on some fishing forum for Lake Monticello in South Carolina, and it randomly was like, hey, the Junior World Championship's coming up here. I really like, I'm gonna come down and pre-fish, because like that's how you like figure out these different lakes. So I was gonna come down for a week to like learn the lake and fish and try to find good spots. Like, anyone have a place I can crash? And then this one guy, Crowbar, that was his name on the internet.
Crowbar 6969.
Yeah, and he like, what were my parents thinking letting me go down there? But Crowbar ended up being like the coolest dude ever. He's like, all right, man, you can have my party house. Like, it's a bit rough around the edges. Holy, there were spiders bigger than my hand in there.
That's where the term spider monkey came from.
It was insane. It was disgusting. He's like, we don't have running water, but we got a couch. You know, it's just like, oh my God. Wow. Long story short, I stay at this party house for a week. I thought it was a good idea not to eat any real food. I was living off of protein bars, Fiber One protein bars. Let's just say by like day 4, I was having some serious digestion issues. I ended up going to a Waffle House. I like broke down and I was like, all right, I'm gonna pull out some cash and invest in a real meal. It's been 5 days of malnutrition and protein bars only. I'm gonna go get myself a good meal. So I like drove down the street. Like, I actually remember it. I was like in a haze had like fallen over my brain because like I hadn't eaten any real food. Probably wasn't drinking water. Like, I was gonna die. Like, I felt like I was on the verge of death. Hadn't slept in 5 days either because of the spiders and lack of running water. Hadn't showered. And I was like driving down the street with I had a Ford Explorer and my little aluminum John boat on the back. And I'm just like driving down the street, and then I just see a Waffle House, and I pull in there, and I like go in, and the lady behind the counter was just like, she could tell, like, hey honey, like, are you doing all right? And I was like, I'm hungry and my stomach hurts. And she's just like, don't worry honey, like, I'll cook you whatever you want. And she like makes me this, you know, probably the Grand Slam breakfast. I probably just got the standard breakfast, but she made me what I thought was like a 5-course meal of just like the most incredible breakfast food I'd ever eaten in my life. And like, I remember leaving that Waffle House, you know, I might have spent $6 on the meal, but I had way more than $6 worth of energy and confidence, and then went back out for the rest of the week and lived in the party house. The guy who owned the party house eventually was like, man, yeah, I probably should have let this guy showered at some point. So he invited me over to his house and let me meet his wife and kids, and let me shower and eat a real meal at his house because he felt bad for me. So it's just it wound up just being this incredible experience. It could have been terrible. I could have been abducted and used as it could have been
horrible
very bad.
things.
Yeah, horrible things could have happened. But it wound up being really great, and I got second place in that tournament. And because of that, I got recruited by the faculty advisor of North Carolina State's fishing team. I got a random email out of the blue, hey Ben, have you ever considered about fishing in college? And I was like, of course I have. Because I had learned that there were a bunch of that's right when college bass fishing had really taken off, and pretty much every major school in the country. I don't know what your alma mater is, but almost guaranteed they had a bass fishing team.
Auburn.
And
Yes.
What is it?
Auburn.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Dude,
bunch of rednecks.
Screw those guys. But it's so funny though, because one of the best fishermen in the world right now came from Auburn. My buddy Jordan Lee, and
really?
I fished against each other. Yeah, he's a beast. But he graduated Auburn. Auburn had a really good fishing team, but they didn't get to keep any of their money, so that sucked for them. At North Carolina State, you got to keep what you killed, because it was a club sport. They didn't fund us. So long story short, I ended up going to North Carolina State to be on the bass fishing team because this faculty advisor recruited me, hosted me for a tour, right? And said here are the lakes we have, here's the club fishing boat, and I just basically was all right, I'm going to North Carolina State. And it was the only school I applied to. And my mom was like, what if you don't get in? I was like, I don't care. I just won't go to college. She's like, yes, you will, and I was like, fine, I'll go to community college and then transfer to Maryland or something. I don't know, whatever, mom. And I got in. Luckily, I got in, and then I fished for the fishing team. It ended up winning a bunch of I think my partner and I won $96,000 while we were in college.
Holy shit! For a college kid, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and we got to keep. So I got to keep half of that in college, and we won a boat. I ended up winning the national championship my senior year in 2012. Beat Auburn, and it was just it was so funny because it was all these SEC schools. Auburn had a phenomenal team, Shea Baker and Jordan Lee. Florida had a phenomenal team. They were winning everything, and it's just so funny. We had this group of rivals, and a lot of these guys ended up going and fishing the pro tour. Jordan ended up winning. Now he's a mega millionaire because he won everything, and he's an Auburn grad. But yeah, man. I mean, it was just it's crazy how one little teeny phone call, because my mentor my teacher from my intern and mentorship GT class junior year happened to have fished a bass fishing tournament on Lake Gaston and remembered the name of the guy that he fished with, who happened to still be in the phone book. It's just life is crazy, man. How one little teeny thing sets the direction for your entire life. So if I had never met Frank, or if I had never applied to be in that mentorship program, and then my teacher Charles Ashcraft had never remembered Frank's name, who knows where I would be right now? I'd probably be a professional basketball player, but here I am. No, I'm just kidding. Because that was my real goal growing up, and then I realized that wasn't going to work.
Seriously, it's incredible. I mean, what you just described really is the domino effect, right? It's this idea of one seemingly innocuous action can set your life on a direction and projection that truly is more than you could ever hope or dream for. And it sounds so corny, but I'll tell you a quick story. I was talking to a guy who's living with me and my wife right now. He's currently training to go to the Olympics. He is a javelin thrower.
Nice.
And for those that don't know a lot about the javelin, and I didn't know a lot about it, but he was obviously he's educating me. There's not money in it. I mean, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anyone that is a track and field athlete, but like, because they're amazing athletes, believe me. A lot of them do, ironically, really well in CrossFit too.
Yeah.
And I can name a few. I mean, Tia Toomey was one. Danielle Brandon was one. Anyways,
decent. They're both very, very decent. I'm just kidding. You named two of my like heroes. I love them.
They're decent exercisers. Anyways, yeah, like when people ask what I do, I'm like, I exercise. Like aerobics. Have you ever heard of it? Step up aerobics.
It's like step aerobics, except for hipsters.
For hipsters that wear beanies and glasses. So, anyways, I was talking to him about this, and this exact thing is, he was telling me about, he went to this no-name college, and then, he started winning, and winning gets you eyeballs, winning gets you attention, and I was just talking to him because he was telling me the story about how, sleeping on couches and like, basically being homeless. And he was just like, dude, if all these things hadn't happened to me in my life, and I mean, some things are good, some things are bad. Like some of the things you described were amazing, but the other end of that coin is there's some things that freaking suck and that are, it feels like the pit of despair. And what he was telling me was incredibly motivating and encouraging, because he was just saying, and now I'm here, and now I'm with people that get it. I'm in a household with people that have the same mentality that I have, that have the same, values as I have in terms of working hard and dedication and discipline and consistency in my life. And what I was telling him, was that, look, man, a lot of people talk about, man, I want to get around those people, because I think the people you surround yourself, to your point, the people you surround yourself with is literally everything in life. I mean,
absolutely.
That statement, it's not what you know, it's who you know, is the truest North Star I have ever heard and experienced. And
for sure.
What I was telling him was that, man, here's what's so important is if you're not that person that, that values those things, or that your actions, and I heard you talk about this, and this is a great book. Is it James Clear, where basically he's talking about your habits, right? It's a vote for the person that you want to be in life.
Yeah. James Clear, Atomic Habits. It's funny. One of my friends, Andy, is good friends with James, so I got to go eat and hang out with James a bunch while he was in Tokyo. This was like before he released the book, and we were talking about the book, and it's like those are like some of the big takeaways that he's like. I was like, all right, tell me about your book. Like, what are like a couple of the bullet points? Because I'm probably not going to read it. I definitely read it multiple times because it's amazing.
I have too.
And he was just like, well, every action you take is like a vote for the person that you want to become, right? And then he also mentioned the identity thing. He's like, one of the easiest ways to make yourself like have better habits, or have habits that I embody the person you want to be, is you change the identity of that person. Like, I think the example he uses in the book maybe is like I'm not a smoker who's trying to quit. I'm not a smoker, right? Like those two, that mindset shift is like different. I'm not a smoker. That person won't smoke. I'm a smoker who's trying to quit. That person is going to be really tempted to try to not smoke, and it's going to tear them apart. And obviously I know it's a lot more nuanced than that, the actual addiction, but,
of course.
But the identity process is something that he's like, it's huge. And a lot of people don't talk about that. Like when you identify as an exerciser, the chances of you skewing your decisions in the direction of exercising is high. But if you identify as, I'm a couch potato who's trying to get into exercise, that's someone who's going to do a lot of couch potato things. And then another big takeaway from that book that he mentioned was like, hey, like don't be like, if you like fail on a habit on a particular day, not a problem. Happens all the time. Don't worry about it. Just try not to do it 2 times in a row, right? Like, because then that's a streak, right? So if you can just like if you skip a workout rather than like, I failed, like, that's where like I get a little, nothing against it, but like I get a little, I get upset when people like beat themselves up for like failing on like a challenge, like the 75 hard challenge, where like they missed day 38 and they're just like, I'm a failure. It's like, dude, no, you just worked out for 38 days in a row. Like, all right, screw it. You missed the one day, not a big deal. Let's pick it back up tomorrow. And like that mentality of like, it's not about, trying to be perfect, but it's more about like, how can I just make the next decision a little bit better? Like, and I think the example he uses in the book is the diet thing. It's like, all right, you eat you're trying to lose weight, and maybe you go out and splurge and have like, 5 margaritas, a bowl of, you eat the entire thing of chips that they bring to the table and eat 3 California burritos, right? That to me sounds like a great time. But that is probably not going to put you in a caloric deficit. So rather than beat yourself up for a week, right, about how you're a failure, just freaking make your next meal healthy. Boom. And then just like try to start a new streak. And it's just like, I don't know, it's simpler stuff than people are. It's simple, and I feel like it's a lot more of like a psyche than it is this like crazy. It's a lot more of like, what do you identify as a human being, rather than like trying to optimize every single part of your life. It's more of just like, hey, like take a little bit easier on yourself, but really try to identify as that person. Something you earlier were mentioning, you talked about like how like all these decisions, like both the good and bad, like shape our lives and turn us into what we're going to be. So a book that someone gave me recently that I read that I really like is called The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life.
I'll write it down.
By Boyd Varty. And the quote in the book that I'm probably going to butcher now that I'm on the spot, but it's phenomenal, is the tracker's anthem, right? And it's also obviously a simile or a mantra metaphor for life. Yeah. Is, I don't know where I'm going, but I know how to get there. And that's when you think about lion tracking or tracking any animal, right? You literally have no idea where you're going. If you knew where you were going, you would just go there because that's where the animal would be. But instead, as in life, we need to track the signs that point us in various directions. So like, rather than trying to like, all right, I'm a freshman in high school and here's what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I'm going to backtrack from that goal to where I am now. And I'm going to set myself up perfectly to become the doctor or whatever, right? Like, rather than building your life like that, the way that I've, lived my life and the way I think a lot of people more accurately live their lives is like, you got to take the sign that's in front of you and pursue it until something else points you in another direction. So just like tracking that lion, you're tracking the footsteps and then the footsteps go cold, but then you see a sign or you hear a roar over here on the right and like, all right, that's where I'm going. And I love that quote. And it's something that like I'm trying to realize is like, I don't know where I'm going. Like, I don't know what the 10-year plan of my life is. And I feel like it's almost silly to consider that because the amount that I've changed over the last 10 years, my God, I'm a fundamentally different human being than I was 10 years ago. If I tried to 10 years ago say, here's my 10-year plan for life and I'm going to backtrack it from there, maybe it would set me up for some forms of success, but it's so much more freeing, I feel like, to live life where you're like, I'm not like waking up today like, I'm sad. All right, I'm going to sell WODPrep and I'm going to go live in the woods, right? It's not quite that degree, but it's just like you're taking the signs of life and letting them dictate where you want to go. Not in an emotional state where you're like, every little whim that you have, you're like, well, I guess I'm like, man, if I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, I want to be a professional pickleball player, which might happen because pickleball is amazing. I'm not going to necessarily wake up and be like, all right, I'm going to throw everything that WODPrep has built out the window and I'm just going to go full send on pickle prep, right? That is not necessarily the way that I'm going to go. But if I'm constantly picking up signs over the next couple of years that are like, man, you really don't like CrossFit and fitness anymore, but you're obsessed with pickleball and it's the fastest growing sport in America, like maybe you should play around with starting something over there. Maybe I'll take that direction. This is a spoiler alert. Maybe I might own the domain name Pickle Prep. Who knows? I do. But it's just, I don't know. I just thought that was a really, really good quote to talk about, like, your buddy who's a javelin thrower. Like, I don't know if he set out to be the world's best javelin thrower, but I love that he knows he wants to be this thing, but he's just like taking the way that life takes him, and then now he's ending up on hopefully qualifying for the Olympics. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, he made it to the trials, so he's on his way.
Sweet.
This right here, I mean, I could do a whole podcast just on this topic, what we're talking about here, and the reason I think that it's so important, it's that quote, kind of be where your feet are, right? You know, be present in the moment. And the reason that I brought this whole thing up was, and I think you did a great. That quote was like beautifully tied together with what we were talking about. So I appreciate you sharing that. You know, track the signs. It's like, you know, I think a lot of people do what you just said. They try to, and this is you know, from probably Gary V, I think is where I saw this one. They'll try to reverse engineer where they're trying to go, and it's like sometimes that works, and oftentimes it doesn't work, because there's the variable of luck, there's the variable of hard work, there's a variable of how much hard work, there's the variable of consistency, there's a variable of lots of things in life, timing, opportunity, there's millions of things, right? And what I was telling him, my buddy, was this: it's like, you realized I need to be in a room, because first step is awareness of anything in life. It's just being aware. And you realize, hey, I need to be in a room with people that most align with the things I believe in from a value standpoint. That's key. I don't care what you're trying to achieve in life. If you're with the wrong people, it's like riding a horse, all right? And that horse has a mind of its own. You have no ability to actually steer that horse. That's what it's like that's what it's like when you're with the wrong people, in my opinion. They are steering you off the effing cliff. You're going off the cliff.
Or you could even say, like, it's a horse that's connected to a bunch of other horses, pulling a carriage, right? I guess it could be Santa. Who knows? And they're all going in the same direction. And it's like, dude, if you don't want to go that direction, then you need to change the crew that you're rolling with. And that's like, so for me, that absolutely has been a huge part of my life too. Is like, I'm in a bunch of like different like business mastermind groups, business mentorship groups, and like just rubbing shoulders with all of these different entrepreneurs from all kinds of different industries. And their goal is just to pursue a life that grants them the freedom to explore and play, and the financial resources to like basically not have to answer to anyone else, right? Like, and because I rub shoulders with those kinds of people for the last, I don't know, like 5-6 years, like that's where I've ended up, right? If I was in a business mastermind group of all people who are trying to IPO and build quadrillion-dollar businesses, then I'd probably be way more stressed out, and I probably would have a bigger business. But right now I'm with a crew that's a lot of lifestyle businesses, and their goal is to just like build a business that sets them up for what they deem a quote-unquote successful life. And for a lot of them, a successful life is a life where they can afford most things, maybe not yachts, but like they can afford to travel, have fun, and not have to work all the damn time. And that's where I've ended up. And that's simply because it's not because I like had this like goal that I backtracked, which I definitely have done that in my business and it's worked successfully, but it's very much just like, who are you rolling with, right? Like if all of my friends worked in corporations and all they did was complain about their jobs and how little they get to have fun, that would be a very weird, stressful group to be in, because it has nothing to do with like my business and the way that I've designed my life. So it's like, surround yourself with people who have lives that are sort of around the same thing that you want to achieve or want to have. It goes back to that book, Wanting. It's by Luke something or other, Luke Borges maybe, and it's about mimetic desire. And it's like literally the whole thing is like you can have good mimetic desires and bad mimetic desires. Basically, like, who are you like intuitively will model your life after someone else, and like again do the whole Borat thing where like he get this step, I get this step, and it's just like it's human nature, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you're miming, if your mimetic desire is based off of people who aren't happy and you don't want to be like, which unfortunately is how a lot of people live their lives. They're like, well, he's got a Ferrari. I need a Ferrari. Like, their business is huge and IPO'd. Like, I guess I got to grow my business really big and IPO. But if you like actually take a step back and it's like, what makes you happy? It's like, whew, you know, like hikes in the wilderness and campfires. It's like, then you don't need to build a huge business to IPO. Like, if that's really what you like want to happen in your life, it's a much simpler route to achieve that happiness that you desire. So lifestyle design is something that's very worth taking a good hard look at and making sure that your desires in life are aligned with like your values and who you actually want to be, not just this hierarchy of like, well, like, you know, I'm senior management and I need to work my way up to C-suite man. You know, it's like, if you're trying to climb this ladder just because that's what people do and you haven't identified that that's what you want to do, then that's very risky.
I think that's where a lot of people get into some hot water, even with CrossFit. You know, they go, ooh, I call it SOS, shiny object syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
And they go, ooh, CrossFit Games. Sounds fun. Sounds cool. IG followers, fame, light, cameras, action, right? And you forget to ask yourself, why the hell do I want this thing? To your point, what is going to make me happy? Does this make me happy? And for some people, no. And the reality, and this is you know, just the interesting reality. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and you know, he was watching one of the like early Matt Frazier documentaries. I think it was like by bodybuilding, like one of the first ones that came out that they did. It was like a 9-part series on YouTube. And the guy asked me, he was like, you know, man, does like, you know, like when was this filmed? I was like, well, this is between his first and second, you know, CrossFit Games championship. And he was like, man, this is kind of weird. He's putting this out here. Like, couldn't his competitors do this, or couldn't the people trying to come up do this? And I said, see, that's the thing though. That's the thing, is that it's not just knowing what to do. I think personally, I think Matt Frazier could have put his, this is going to be controversial, but I think he could have put his programming out because it's you still have to freaking do it. Like, right? Like, and so I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, is like, oh, it looks so good. But then you go, oh, okay, you wanted this. Okay, here's the bill. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's even said multiple times, he's like, no one wants it. Like, even his programming, he's admitted, he's like, my programming is not what I did. It's just like funny because he's like, no one will do what I do. And he's probably right. You know, like, I mean, the programming that he did was probably just straight up attacking his weaknesses. 100%. Do you think he did many clean and jerks and snatches? No, because he was already an Olympic level or close to Olympic level weightlifter. I mean, he was training to be on the team. Okay. So in the sport of CrossFit, he didn't need to do that anymore. So what was he doing? He was running all the time. He was swimming all the time. He was doing rope climbs. He was doing all this stuff that, like, I mean, if you wake up every other day and you have, you know, 400 and 800 meter repeat runs, guess what? No one's going to follow your programming. But that's probably what he did. So
I agree. Yeah.
And also, like, in terms of, like, there's a lot of people who compete. I mean, I used to compete a lot. And then I kind of had this realization that it was like, I'm not happy when I'm doing this. And if, like, the only way I'm quote unquote happy for a very fleeting moment is if I win. And I realized, like, I'm setting myself up for a life of stress if I compete more in this sport. So when they moved the regional qualifying from, you know, top 48 to like top 20, I was like, and here's where I retire. You know, thank you, goodbye. And it was great. It was very freeing to do that. And then I got to go fishing and build the business and do scratch other itches that weren't just like, all right, if I want to be on this path, I'm going to have to live in the gym for, you know, a few hours every single day, doing potentially multiple sessions a day and like really hammering all the things I hate, doing lots of running, swimming and biking. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So it's you gotta be careful getting caught up in the rat race, whichever rat race that is. It doesn't necessarily have to be a corporate hierarchy. It's like before you dedicate yourself to this competition landscape, or before you dedicate yourself to this like lofty goal, like make sure it's a goal that you actually are willing to put in the sacrifice to achieve. Otherwise, like, find a different goal or do something else. Follow some other sign that like what are you actually enjoying, and follow that track a little bit farther. It's not to say that you need to wake up every day and be like, I love doing this, right? Because I guarantee there were lots of days where Matt woke up and he was like, I don't want to do this, but he did it because he had that very clear vision of his goal. So yeah.
I want to bring this back together because you mentioned something earlier about your mentor Frank telling you, hey, start a business so that you can support what you really love, basically be your own sponsor, which I think is great advice, by the way.
Yes.
And you are very successful in college at NC State. I lived in North Carolina for 5 years, so
nice.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Great place, wonderful place. And
it is.
It really is. So I'm curious, as you got out of it, out of college, were you still trying to pursue that, or is maybe, in my mind, is that where the CrossFit thing kind of came in and like WODPrep gets born, and then like you go, oh, here's the thing Frank was talking about. Let me start this business. Yep. I keep doing the whole fishing thing.
Yeah. So what happened was my goal all through college was to go pro in the fishing industry. So I wanted to be a professional fisherman, and I set myself up for that. Like, I had sponsors, I had momentum, and then I won the national championship my senior year. Like, it was perfect. Out of like 190 teams, Ethan and I won the freaking big time. And I was planning to parlay that into, like, this was going to be the perfect step into the pro circuit.
Yeah.
But I had this realization, again, probably like a lot of what Frank kind of whispered in my ear. But I also had this realization that if I go pro in fishing, there's still like this kind of nagging thing where it's like, I'm not helping anyone. Like, if I'm going to be a professional fisherman, it's like, it's all about me trying to scrape up sponsorships to pay for me to go fishing, where I'm just trying to win tournaments. And I just realized, like, again, this isn't a knock at all, against like pro fishing or whatever. I think a lot of people get inspired to enjoy the outdoors by the industry. But I just realized that like it was a pursuit of, it would just be a very selfish pursuit of like, it's all about me and it's all about my sponsors, and I gotta get my nut, and I gotta, go. And at around that time, I also had this, like, I took this entrepreneurship class in college where basically I wrote up a business plan on like starting a CrossFit gym. And like CrossFit was hot and it was growing, and I always had this dream to like maybe one day start a gym. And long story short, when I started like sort of kind of pulling on the thread of maybe starting my own gym, fishing the pro tour, I like threw out some like potential sponsor package deals, and they didn't get picked up. Like, I realized like, actually getting enough money to pay for my entry fees and travel, like that's going to be a bit of a stretch. I could do it. I just have to hustle way more to get it. But when I started pulling on the thread of like, man, maybe I'll like do some CrossFit stuff, because I was into it. I was competing. I was like won a couple events, and I really like the coaching aspect. Like, that kind of seemed natural to me, like explaining how to do movements simply, aka what WODPrep is. But like explaining how to do all these complex things simply to my classes was something I really loved doing.
Yeah.
And like moved back home, because that's what college people do outside of college these days. So I moved back home to Maryland, like with my parents, and just like started pulling on this thread of like, maybe I'll do some coaching in the area. And then had a friend of a friend, or he had basically like one of my friends in high school, his older brother was like, hey, like I'm thinking about starting a CrossFit gym. Are you interested in maybe like helping me? And I was like, yeah. And then we just started like investigating it, and then boom, like long story short, it turned into opening a freaking CrossFit gym. And like, so I just kind of kept pulling at that thread, and the dominoes kept falling in that direction. The dominoes weren't falling in the pro fishing direction. And ultimately, if I looked at my life, I was like, which one is going to make a bigger impact on the world? You know, like on other people, not necessarily myself. And I was like, teaching CrossFit, definitely. And that's exactly what happened. It's like, you know, now I have a lot of relatives, like my aunts, they still, from my original CrossFit gym, which I no longer own, like Aunt Jane and Aunt Carol are still called Aunt Jane and Aunt Carol by people who have no idea who I am, right? Like, which I just find amazing. They still go like 5 to 6 days per week, every single morning. And it's awesome. So like the impact of that gym, and then, you know, ultimately WODPrep was born, and I feel like we've made a big impact over there. It just all came from like just not getting so locked in on my goal that like I am going to be the world's greatest professional fisherman. I kind of like had a moment where I was just like, what's going to make a bigger impact, and what dominoes are falling easier for me? And it was definitely the let's start a CrossFit gym path. And then, you know, that brings me to today.
Were you doing CrossFit in college, or was this all post college?
No, I was doing CrossFit in college. I found CrossFit dude, full circle. I found CrossFit between my freshman and sophomore year of college. Guess which person in my life told me about it? Just take a wild guess.
Your fishing partner.
Close. My teacher, Charles Ashcraft, that found my fishing partner, that same teacher was the one that told me about CrossFit, because I was like revisiting him in like basically like when the freshmen from college come back and like haze the you know, all their friends that are still in high school. That was like me, and I went back to something like I went back to my high school basically, and like saw Mr. Ashcraft, and like basically like had a meeting with him, like caught him up. I'm like, oh my God, like my first year of the fishing team has been amazing. Here's all the stuff we've done. And I was just catching him up on life. I was still fishing tournaments with Frank, because that continued all the way through high school through college as well, and we're still staying in touch. And I came back in, and he's just like, yeah, well, I'm like, what are you up to? He's like, well, just started this new workout routine. It's crazy. It's called CrossFit. Our warm-ups are like everyone else's workout, and we do these crazy pull-ups called kippering pull-ups. So freaking Mr. Ashcraft basically is the reason I've, you know, still exist to this day. He literally like set me up with this mentor that took me down this whole path of being a pro fisherman, and that worked out really well in college, and still like it was a major part of my life. And then like just by happenstance was like, yeah, I do this thing called CrossFit. You should try it. And then like I tried CrossFit the next day because I went to CrossFit.com just like he told me to do. I did the official CrossFit warm-up, which is basically like 3 rounds of Cindy. And then poof, I threw up, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then was off to the races there. So how crazy is that? You want to talk about serendipitous full circle? Like Mr. Ashcraft is the reason I basically did everything in life. Nuts.
Do you please tell me you still like talk to this guy to this day?
Yes, I do. Like he's retired, and he's like straight up like redneck living on Lake Gaston right now. You know, where like he still tags me all the time. He's like, Ben, look what I caught today, and I'm like, that's a lot of fish, Mr. Ashcraft. You should release them and stop putting them on a stringer. You know, because he'll be like, I caught 20 bass today. I'm like, that's way too many to keep at one time. That's illegal. You know, like, but he's a connector. He's like the ultimate connector. So yeah, just so crazy how that came full circle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something I heard you talk about in an earlier podcast was digital minimalism, and this is a rabbit hole, so we'll stay.
I have that book by Cal Newport sitting right on the shelf behind mine. Yeah.
I'm curious because it obviously talks about, you know, eliminating things. And I'm curious for you, what is something that you've eliminated, and not just eliminated, because a lot of people will just say shit they've eliminated, but actually eliminated and found helpful. Because I mean, eliminating things just to eliminate things doesn't seem very helpful to me.
Sure.
But I'm curious your thoughts on that.
The first one that came to mind, I'm just going to go with it, is I have eliminated ever being in my bed and having my laptop or phone. So like, you will never see me at my house. For whatever reason, when I travel, I can't stick with this. But when I'm home, I have like this, I've convinced myself that if I touch my bed and my phone at the same time, I'll explode or something like that. Like will not be in my bed or touching my bed at all, and also touching either my laptop or my phone. And what that does is that like eliminates the potential distraction of like being in bed and like scrolling through Instagram, or like being in bed and watching Netflix. Like I've separated these two things entirely. So if I want to be scrolling on my phone, like I have to be not in bed. So I don't know, that's the first thing that came to mind, but that's something that I eliminated, I don't know, a long time ago. And I've stuck with it ever since.
Ooh, a lot of people listen to this. I mean, I don't really have a problem with my laptop, but man, do I try to put my phone down when I've done a better job of it. I think being married has. I'm trying to think what made me stop doing that. I'm like, oh yeah, I got married. But
it's hard, especially if like you use your phone as like your alarm, which I don't. Like I literally every night I plug in my phone in like one of the office room in my house, and it's like very far away. And I plug it in and I go to bed. And in bed, I can read a Kindle or like read an actual physical book, but that's it. That's the only thing I can do right in that room. It's like I'm not watching Netflix. I'm not on my phone. And just like creating that separation I can only imagine how much sleep that's gotten me. I can only imagine how many rabbit holes it's prevented me from going down. And yeah, that's that one little like life hack has been really great. And I want to add more to my life. Like I want to find ways to do more meditation. But that's one, if you're asking about like minimalism and like removing something from my life, that would definitely be one of them.
So as we're kind of wrapping up here, you mentioned pickleball, which I've never played. I know what it is. Gosh, I've just never played.
Amazing.
So I obviously WODPrep and I don't know what measure you use to say you guys are successful. I would say you guys are successful. I mean, you talked about how being in is important to help a lot of people. I think you've done that, for sure. And granted, I don't know how you quantify that to say this many people took the course, whatever the case was, or this many people posted I got my first pull up.
The business is still operational, and a lot of people still message us saying, I learned XYZ from watching your free videos. So there's a lot of people who have spent precisely $0 with my business that have learned a lot of things, and I'm cool with that. Like I think that's great. And the fact that the business still operates means we have at least some semblance of profit. So the impact is fun, and we're having a good time. So calling it successful, again, like depending on, it's all about what metric you're measuring it by.
Yeah, It is.
But yeah.
So I'm curious for you, like what's next? I mean, I kind of teased the pickleball thing just because you said you owned the domain, Pickle Prep or something. But it doesn't have to be that. I'm just curious. Have you thought about this, or is this something that you're like, man, I'm just, I'm really on fire for CrossFit right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm like super on fire for CrossFit. Meaning like for me personally, like, there are times in the business where like it's a bit maybe routine. But what's great is I have such an amazing team that, based on recent surveys, loves what they do. And they do a phenomenal job. They do a better job of coaching and taking care of athletes than I ever could. So I have there's no like, I'm kind of, burned out by WODPrep. I think the next thing for WODPrep that I'm going to hopefully be able to tackle and conquer is like, rather than right now, we kind of like help people who already do CrossFit get better at CrossFit, or functional fitness, get better at functional fitness. That's kind of like what we do now. I'm very, very interested to expand that and see if there's a way that I can build something or help even more people like move from couch to CrossFit. Like if there's one thing that I've done a decent job of like in my family, it's convincing people who don't work out to like actually fall in love with CrossFit. Like I've had that happen a couple times. And I'm not like a super hardcore, like this is the only exercise you should do, everything else sucks. No, I realize like the way to get people into fitness is to make fitness fun for them. So I'm hoping to develop, whether it's a course or a system or something where I can like actually introduce people who are what we might call like CrossFit curious. I want to help those people like drink the Kool-Aid and experience fun in exercise and feel good about themselves, and then eventually feed those people into local affiliates. Like that's probably like the next thing. Ultimately, that's still definitely like in the wheelhouse of WODPrep and the fitness business. In terms of like what else am I going to do? Honestly, I very much pursue, I'm a hobby guy. I have too many hobbies and I get full blown obsession with them. Like just like it was racing pocket bikes back in middle school and basketball cards and whatever. Now it's like very much I have the Colorado hobbies of mountain biking, which I love, and backcountry snowboarding, which it's almost time for that.
It is.
Elk hunting, or like archery elk hunting, like where I lived in the woods all of September and hunted elk with a bow and arrow. Like absolutely the most obsessive I've ever been with anything, probably.
Wow.
I told my family, I was like, I will never be available for anything in September for the rest of my life. So please, no weddings or funerals in the month of September. Like I will be unavailable. So I'm just like pursuing hobbies. Like climbing is another one I might get into. Fly fishing, different than the bass fishing scene, but like it seems like a natural thing I'll probably fall in love with. Obviously, I love pickleball. Like, so just I'm like pursuing hobbies, and then who knows what'll happen on the back end of that. Will the business pop up? Maybe. But for now, like WODPrep has a great thing going. I don't want to kill I never want to like kill something that has great momentum. And I love my team and I love the athletes that we're making an impact on. So I just would like to see that expand. I'm not necessarily like, I want to turn WODPrep into a $15 million business by 2027. You know, it's like, no, I don't have any specific goals to that other than like, let's keep growing to outpace inflation and let's keep making a bigger impact.
Well, look, I mean, it's anybody that has ever started CrossFit has probably come across one of your videos when they type into YouTube how to do a double under, how to do a bar muscle up, how to do a pull. I mean, because these are all things that not everyone comes in with. I mean, now, you know, obviously the hyper competitive, you know, side of CrossFit's like, we need to do 30 unbroken, you know, muscle ups or whatever. But, you know, the point is, I think anyone that's ever started has, I know I have, come across your video. And one of the things that I can say, and this is not blowing smoke up anybody's skirt, this is just a kudos to you guys, is that not only are they informative and they're solid information, but they're fun and they're funny and they're captivating and they keep my attention for the 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes that the video is going on. So really kudos to you, man, and not to mention, you're one of the best storytellers that I've had on here.
I appreciate it, man.
Seriously, you know, the way you tell stories is very captivating. It holds people's attention. So
that's the fisherman in me,
man.
Because every fisherman has to be good at lying about what they
Fish
caught.
Tales. It gets bigger and bigger.
It gets bigger and more dramatic each time.
Yeah, man. So I'll put all your info down in the bio, but just real quick, where can people find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, first of all, I really appreciate all those kind words. You know, I really, really appreciate that. If anybody wants to find me or the business, WODPrep, I'm WODPrep on all the channels. So youtube.com/WODPrep, facebook.com/WODPrep, Instagram.com/WODPrep. If you want to actually like get in touch with me personally, spoiler alert, the only thing I still check is Instagram DMs. Most like email is a black box, and I actually have like a team of people that help me process email. It's bad. We get so many emails. So yeah, if you want to like hit me up about this podcast specifically, just shoot me a DM on Instagram, and you know, it might take a little while, but yeah, I love to chat with people on there. And obviously WODPrep.com. Like if you're someone who's actually interested in learning how to get better at these things that we have to get good at in functional fitness and CrossFit. WODPrep.com has a lot of resources. A lot of them are free. And then I have a whole library of paid courses. We have a coaching community online, and we also do one-on-one coaching. So we have a whole suite of things to help you level up.
Thanks, Ben. Man, I really appreciate your time, dude. This was such a pleasure.
Yeah, man, I had a blast. I love talking about old stories that I've never remembered. And
this was fun.
Once the ideas start flowing, they don't stop. So thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.